Beauty is more than just a physical aspect. You have to put that aside and you have to look at the emotional part of it also. Many people have problems with their self-image because they only look at what they look like. They think they need to compare themselves to people in media, such as models, or even when they played the Victoria's Secret fashion show, everyone was super thin, but not everyone is supposed to be the same. You're supposed to be your own person. So how exactly do you find yourself? Well, you have to look at your attitude and your personality first. If you have negative attitudes in life, then you're probably going to have negative attitudes about your actual self, which leads to other things such as eating disorders, which I will talk about later. But to start off with, you need to think about what you want, like set goals for yourself, and they should be realistic. If you have problems with what you look like, then you should change it, but in a healthy way, which could be exercising or changing your balance or changing your diet. Um, I think that with self-esteem, the biggest part is having self-confidence, which is believing in yourself, not what others think, which is also one of the hardest things because of the spotlight effect, which is taking what other people say and letting it get you too much and assuming what they say is actually correct when it's not. I have a personal experience with this and with my cousin, and also having bad things that happen in your life previous can also have bad things in the future happen with eating disorders, and that was the case. She dated a guy for 2 years, and he was actually very violent to her, and he abused her physically and emotionally, actually, and she kept staying with him. No one saw it, obviously, because she hid it for a while, but she said the reason why she kept going back to him is because she always looked at the good things, and she said that he actually made her feel good about herself, and if she wasn't with him, then she feels like she wasn't good enough, so she took that violence. Well, he ended up committing suicide actually by overdosing, and her whole life after was actually really hard, and I actually helped her out a lot and talked with her because from my psychology class in high school and even just from basic knowledge, and I always had an interest in self-esteem. I would help, or I talked to her because I noticed that she stopped eating, and I knew that she was trying to starve herself. And I explained to her that you were perfectly fine with yourself before, and I asked her like what changed that, and she said, "Oh, well, I think that I'm never gonna find a guy if I'm not skinny enough. I'm not gonna ever find a new guy." And I talked to her and I said, "Well, you're never gonna find a new person unless you love yourself for who you are." So she actually was bulimic for a long time, which is where you eat a lot, but then you end up making yourself puke. So I had to finally, I helped her to talk to a counselor, and she finally overcame that eating disorder. But that all just relates back to not being happy with yourself and not thinking of your self-image and your self-esteem as emotional, but only the physical aspect. I think people are starting too young wearing makeup, especially obviously with girls. They start wearing makeup at too young of an age, and like beauty pageants, for example, when they show beauty pageants on TV even or on billboards and magazines, it's always this perfect skinny girl that has no flaws. And so when you're that little and you see this beautiful girl with all this makeup, you're obviously going to want to try to look like her, and you're going to try to change yourself completely. I actually watched this commercial for Dove and how they totally change the looks of a person just to try to make them fit what is so-called beautiful, but they in the end they're not really happy with themselves because they have to spend hours putting on makeup and doing their hair and worrying about their looks, and it starts to change their personality and make them more stuck up. And I think that that should change because it's sad to see even little young girls worrying about what they look like because they're not good enough. And I think it has a lot to do with the media. So I think possible solutions for your self-esteem and your self-image should be looking and or maybe even writing down or talking with other people all the positive things about yourself and what you like about yourself, and making yourself find those positive sides because it'll start to stay away from the negative sides. And also you have to make sure you have the right group of friends, and you have to think that you can't compare yourself to others because everyone is their own person, and the rates of self-esteem right now are actually um, really low, and there's a way higher percent of people who are really insecure about themselves. And I think that there are certain things that people need to look into to try to change that. And if they're not happy with themselves, they need to not just necessarily starve themselves, and because that's how eating disorders happen, they need to think about putting thoughts mentally in their head, because I think your self-image and the definition of your actual self is more your attitude and your personality. And from my own personal experiences, things can change, and hopefully that in the future that will change. So self-esteem, you need to know that it's more than just how pretty you are and how you look, and how it's more than comparing yourself with others. It is your actual attitudes in life. And I think that self-esteem is overlooked, and I think it's one of the most important topics around today.